What if the mind is not just a byproduct of the brain? What if consciousness doesn't vanish when the brain stops working? What if near-death experiences, mystical states, and psychic phenomena aren't illusions, but glimpses into a deeper reality? These are the powerful questions explored in Irreducible Mind, Toward a Psychology for the 21st Century by Edward F. Kelly and his team of researchers. This groundbreaking book challenges the dominant materialist view of modern science by presenting overwhelming evidence that the human mind cannot be fully explained by brain activity alone. Through meticulously documented studies, from hypnosis and savant abilities to near-death experiences and spontaneous healings, it suggests that consciousness may be a fundamental, irreducible force in nature. The authors combine decades of research across psychology, neuroscience, philosophy, and parapsychology to argue for a broader, more inclusive scientific model, one that accepts and investigates human experiences that mainstream science has often ignored or dismissed. Irreducible Mind is not just a critique of current scientific thought. It's a call to rethink the nature of mind, self, and reality itself. If you've ever felt that science hasn't fully explained the depth of human experience, this book will make you think again. Welcome to Audiobook World, your trusted space for rich, engaging, and powerful audiobook summaries in English. Here we bring you the essence of the world's most influential books, summarized with clarity, depth, and a focus on real transformation. Our mission is to make life-changing ideas from the world of psychology, science, self-development, and spirituality accessible and inspiring for every curious mind. Let's begin this extraordinary journey into one of the most thought-provoking books ever written on consciousness and the human spirit. This is Irreducible Mind. This is Audiobook World. Chapter 1. Psychology's Tunnel Vision. Modern psychology, despite its scientific progress, often operates within a narrow tunnel, a tunnel built by the assumptions of materialism. In this opening chapter of Irreducible Mind, Edward F. Kelly and his co-authors lay the foundation for their central argument that mainstream psychology and neuroscience are too limited in scope to fully understand the richness of human consciousness. The chapter begins by exposing a major flaw in conventional science, its deep commitment to physicalism, the idea that everything, including the mind, can ultimately be reduced to physical processes in the brain. According to this view, thoughts, emotions, creativity, and even consciousness are merely byproducts of neural activity. But this approach has created a blind spot. By ignoring or dismissing phenomena that don't fit the physicalist model, science has left out some of the most intriguing and profound aspects of human experience. Kelly and his team argue that experiences such as near-death episodes, mystical states, telepathy, and even the power of hypnosis cannot be fully explained by brain function alone. Yet these are exactly the types of experiences that mainstream psychology often brushes aside, labeling them as hallucinations, anomalies, or fringe cases. The authors call this behavior tunnel vision, science focusing only on what it wants to see, while deliberately ignoring what it doesn't understand. The chapter also delves into the history of psychology, showing how early pioneers like William James were far more open to exploring extraordinary mental phenomena. But over time, as psychology tried to establish itself as a hard science, it moved away from open inquiry and became dominated by behaviorism, neuroscience, and the assumption that consciousness is nothing more than brain chemistry. The authors point out a major contradiction. Despite the enormous advances in brain imaging and cognitive science, we still don't understand what consciousness actually is. The hard problem of consciousness, why subjective experiences arise from brain activity at all, remains unsolved. And yet, many scientists continue to assume that once we map every brain signal, the mystery will somehow disappear. But Kelly and his team are not convinced. They believe that consciousness is something deeper, possibly irreducible, meaning it cannot be broken down into smaller physical parts. This belief challenges the very core of scientific materialism. Rather than reducing the mind to the brain, the authors propose expanding psychology to include a broader range of experiences, even those considered paranormal or spiritual. In this first chapter, the tone is bold, assertive, and deeply intellectual. The authors don't claim to have all the answers, but they are asking the right questions, the kind that push the boundaries of what science is willing to explore. and they are inviting us to break free from the tunnel, to step into the full spectrum of human consciousness, because until we do, psychology will remain incomplete, and the most mysterious, meaningful parts of our minds will stay hidden in the dark. Chapter 2. The Strange History of Cartesianism. In this chapter, the authors dive into the philosophical roots of modern science's view of the mind, specifically the legacy of René Descartes. While Descartes is widely credited as the father of modern philosophy and scientific reasoning, his ideas also planted the seeds of a deep divide, one that still affects how we think about consciousness today. Descartes introduced the concept of dualism, the idea that the mind and body are two separate substances. The mind is non-physical and capable of thought, while the body and brain is purely physical and subject to mechanical laws. This was a radical idea in the 17th century and served as a powerful framework for the development of modern science. By treating the body as a machine, scientists were free to study it using the methods of physics and mathematics, without interference from religion or metaphysics. However, this split between mind and body created a dilemma that science has never fully resolved. How can a non-physical mind interact with a physical brain? Over time, many scientists abandoned Descartes' dualism and moved toward materialism, the belief that only physical matter exists and therefore the mind must be nothing more than brain activity. But this materialist view, according to Edward F. Kelly and his team, is just as problematic. It tries to eliminate the mind altogether or reduce it to a secondary status, merely a product of brain chemistry. Yet, as the authors point out, this reductionist approach fails to explain subjective experience, intentionality, free will, and other aspects of consciousness that don't fit into the materialist framework. The chapter takes us through the philosophical evolution from Descartes to modern thinkers, showing how each step tried to solve the mind-body problem, but never quite succeeded. It highlights how the scientific community, in an effort to be rigorous and objective, has chosen to ignore or dismiss the very thing it set out to understand: the inner experience of being conscious. Kelly and his co-authors argue that we are still trapped in a Cartesian mindset, even if we've discarded Descartes' actual beliefs. Modern science continues to treat the body as real and measurable, while treating consciousness as a vague byproduct, a mystery that can be pushed aside. This mindset, they say, has limited the growth of psychology and blinded researchers to important dimensions of the human experience. By revisiting the historical and philosophical foundations of science, the authors show that our current problems in understanding consciousness aren't just technical, they are conceptual. We need a new way of thinking that doesn't split reality into physical and non-physical, but instead integrates mind and matter into a more unified framework. This chapter is both a history lesson and a philosophical challenge. It reminds us that science is not free from assumptions. And if we want to truly understand consciousness, we must question the very ideas that have shaped our scientific worldview. Chapter 3. The Radical Implications of Psychophysiological Influence. In this chapter, Edward F. Kelly and his co-authors investigate a phenomenon that challenges the foundations of modern neuroscience: the ability of the mind to influence the body in ways that appear far more powerful and mysterious than what current scientific models can explain. Known as psychophysiological influence, this mind-body interaction includes the placebo effect, hypnotic suggestions, and intentional regulation of internal body states, each of which implies that consciousness can affect biological processes in meaningful and sometimes dramatic ways. The chapter opens with a closer look at the placebo effect, a medically recognized but poorly understood phenomenon where patients improve after receiving treatments with no active ingredients, simply because they believe the treatment will help. This is more than imagination. It's measurable, physiological change triggered by belief. From lowered pain responses to altered brain activity and immune responses, the placebo effect suggests that expectation alone can create real healing. The authors then dive into the field of hypnosis, where mental suggestion can override basic physical reactions. Under hypnosis, people have experienced pain relief during surgery, developed allergic reactions to neutral substances, or even created blisters and burns through imagined contact with heat. These responses aren't faked, they're real, physical effects initiated through focused attention and belief. Moving further, the chapter examines biofeedback and meditation, practices that show people can learn to control supposedly automatic functions like heart rate, blood pressure, and brain waves. These examples demonstrate that the mind can intervene directly in the body's systems, without drugs or surgery, using intention alone. In long-term meditators, for instance, not only is stress reduced, but the brain physically changes, developing new neural patterns that reflect the inner training of attention and awareness. Another striking area covered is the spontaneous remission of illness, where people recover from serious diseases such as cancer without medical explanation. While rare, these cases are documented and point toward the possibility that mental or emotional transformation, such as forgiveness, spiritual insight, or a renewed will to live, may trigger deeply regenerative processes in the body. What ties all of these cases together, the authors argue, is a single radical implication. The mind is not just a byproduct of the brain, it is an agent that can direct, alter, and even heal the body. And this agent cannot be fully understood by materialist models that reduce consciousness to electrochemical activity alone. Kelly and his team emphasize that these findings demand a new scientific framework, one in which consciousness is recognized not only as real, but as causally powerful. They argue that this doesn't mean abandoning science, but rather expanding its scope to include subjective experience and intention as legitimate forces in human biology. Ultimately, this chapter calls on scientists and readers alike to take seriously what has long been treated as marginal or anecdotal. By embracing the full implications of psychophysiological influence, we open the door to a richer, more integrated understanding of what it means to be human. One where mind and body are not separate but intimately connected through a conscious will that is far from reducible. Chapter 4. The Evidence for Subliminal and Unconscious Processes. In this chapter, the authors explore the invisible forces that operate beneath the surface of our conscious awareness. Edward F. Kelly and his co-authors dive deep into the world of subliminal perception, unconscious cognition, and implicit mental processes, challenging the belief that consciousness is the only driver of human thought and behavior. The chapter begins by examining classic and modern research on subliminal stimuli, information presented so briefly or subtly that it never reaches conscious awareness, yet still affects behavior. For example, studies have shown that people can respond to words or images they never consciously saw, influencing their decisions, emotions, or physiological responses. This suggests that the unconscious mind is constantly processing information and guiding action in ways we don't recognize. From there, the authors explore a wide range of unconscious capabilities, including implicit learning, automatic writing, dream incubation, and even savant skills, all of which reveal a vast mental landscape hidden from ordinary awareness. These functions demonstrate that the unconscious is not a simple storage bin for repressed thoughts, as Freud once believed, but a sophisticated system with intelligence and creativity of its own. Particularly compelling are the case studies involving individuals who access knowledge, memories, or problem-solving abilities through altered states such as hypnosis or trance. In many of these cases, people demonstrate skills and insights that seem beyond their conscious training or experience. These findings raise a critical question. Where is the line between conscious and unconscious? And can the unconscious mind operate independently of the brain's usual executive centers? The chapter also examines how split-brain research and neurological case studies support the idea of multiple levels of consciousness. Patients with damage to certain brain areas can still process visual or verbal information unconsciously. Even when they claim not to see something, their bodies respond as if they did. This disconnect between conscious report and unconscious behavior suggests that there are multiple selves operating at once within the mind. Kelly and his team argue that these hidden processes are not just mental noise, they may be integral to the structure of consciousness itself. They propose that rather than seeing consciousness as a single spotlight shining on experience, we should view it as a layered system, with the conscious mind floating on top of a vast unconscious sea. And within that sea lie abilities, insights, and patterns that science is only beginning to understand. The author suggests that the failure of mainstream science to take these processes seriously is another symptom of its tunnel vision. Because unconscious phenomena don't fit easily into physicalist models of the mind, they're often ignored or labeled as irrelevant. But this neglect leaves out a critical piece of the puzzle. By recognizing the depth and autonomy of unconscious processes, this chapter urges us to revise our picture of the mind. Consciousness is not isolated or all-powerful. It is part of a dynamic system, constantly interacting with deeper levels of mental activity. And only by studying these hidden layers can we hope to build a true science of mind. Chapter 5. Memory Beyond the Brain. In this chapter, Edward F. Kelly and his co-authors confront one of the most provocative ideas in the study of consciousness: that memory may not be entirely stored in the brain. While neuroscience has long held that memories are encoded in neural circuits, distributed patterns of synaptic activity, the authors argue that this explanation is incomplete, and in some cases, flatly inconsistent with the evidence. The chapter begins with a detailed review of what mainstream science knows about brain-based memory, including how damage to certain areas, like the hippocampus, affects recall. It acknowledges the impressive work done using tools like brain imaging, lesion studies, and cognitive testing. But the authors quickly point out that these approaches only take us so far. While we can often locate where memory is affected, we still don't truly understand how memory is stored or retrieved. The mechanisms remain mysterious. To challenge the materialist assumption, the chapter introduces cases that seem to defy the idea that memory resides solely in the brain. One of the most striking examples comes from children who report detailed past life memories, often verified by real-world evidence. These children, sometimes as young as 2 or 3, describe people, places, and events from previous lives with uncanny accuracy, without having any way to learn such information through normal means. The authors also explore near-death experiences, NDEs, where individuals report vivid, coherent memories and perceptions during times when their brains show no measurable activity. These accounts suggest that memory, awareness, and even personality may persist independently of brain function. If true, this challenges the core belief that consciousness, and by extension memory, is purely a product of physical structures. Another critical case the chapter presents is that of people with hydrocephalus, a condition where fluid buildup compresses the brain. In rare but documented cases, individuals with severely reduced brain volume have demonstrated near-normal cognitive function and intact memories. These anomalies don't make sense if memory truly depends on having a certain amount of brain tissue or neural density. Kelly and his team are careful not to draw simplistic conclusions. They acknowledge that such cases are rare and that more research is needed. But they argue that the existence of even a few well-documented exceptions should force science to reconsider its basic assumptions. Memory, they suggest, may be non-local, not confined to the brain alone, but potentially involving fields or processes that extend beyond the body. To support this idea, the authors draw parallels to quantum theory, morphic fields, and other models where information is stored or transmitted without a fixed physical medium. While speculative, these theories open the door to a radically different understanding of how the mind works, not as a machine processing neural codes, but as a dynamic system capable of connecting with information in ways we don't yet understand. Ultimately, this chapter dares to ask, what if memory is not stored in the brain at all, but accessed through it, like a TV tuning into a signal? If that's the case, our entire approach to psychology, neuroscience, and even medicine would need to be rethought. And the mind would no longer be seen as a prisoner of the skull, but as a participant in a much wider field of awareness. Chapter 6. Beyond the Brain: Evidence from Near-Death Experiences. In this powerful and deeply compelling chapter, Edward F. Kelly and his co-authors turn their attention to one of the most controversial and revealing areas of consciousness research: near-death experiences, NDEs. These are episodes reported by individuals who have come close to death, often during cardiac arrest, severe trauma, or surgical procedures, yet return with vivid, structured, and often life-changing accounts of what they experienced during the time their brains were thought to be inactive or non-functional. The authors begin by addressing a fundamental assumption in neuroscience: that conscious experience requires a functioning brain. But NDEs challenge this directly. In many well-documented cases, individuals report seeing, hearing, thinking, and even feeling emotions at a time when their brains showed no measurable activity on EEGs. Some experiences even include detailed perceptions of the operating room or events happening outside their physical body. Accounts later confirmed to be accurate. Kelly and his team argue that such cases are not simply hallucinations or the result of a dying brain. In fact, they carefully dismantle the common materialist explanations, such as oxygen deprivation, chemical surges, or wishful thinking, by showing that these physiological processes do not account for the clarity, structure, or transformative power of true NDEs. Many experiencers report a profound sense of awareness, often more vivid than normal waking consciousness, along with encounters with beings, life reviews, or a sense of returning to a source beyond time and space. One of the most striking aspects of NDEs is their consistency across cultures and medical conditions. Regardless of religious belief or background, many people report similar elements, such as floating above the body, moving through a tunnel, encountering a bright light, or feeling a sense of overwhelming love and unity. This universality suggests that NDEs are not simply cultural constructs, but may reflect a common human experience when the brain is no longer in control. The chapter also examines veridical NDEs, in which individuals report observing real-world events from an out-of-body perspective, events they could not have known through normal sensory channels. These cases, if taken seriously, imply that conscious awareness can separate from the physical brain and continue to function independently. This, of course, is a radical idea, but one the authors believe deserves serious scientific investigation. Kelly and his co-authors emphasize that NDEs do more than just challenge neuroscience. They offer a new lens on the nature of consciousness itself. Rather than being created by the brain, consciousness may use the brain as a receiver or interface. When the brain is shut down, the receiver stops functioning properly, but the signal, the mind, may still exist. This chapter invites us to consider the spiritual and philosophical implications of such findings. If consciousness can exist apart from the brain, then death may not be the end of awareness. The mind may be more than just biology. It may be part of a deeper, more enduring reality that science is only beginning to glimpse. Ultimately, this chapter is both a critique of narrow materialist assumptions and a bold exploration of what lies beyond the limits of the physical. It challenges readers to face the possibility that the brain is not the source of consciousness, but merely one of its instruments. Chapter 7. The Challenge of Psi Phenomena. In this chapter, Edward F. Kelly and his co-authors explore one of the most controversial frontiers in consciousness research, psi phenomena, a category that includes telepathy, precognition, clairvoyance, and psychokinesis. These are mental abilities that appear to transcend the limits of time, space, and matter. For many in the scientific community, such phenomena are dismissed outright as pseudoscience. But the authors of Irreducible Mind argue that these experiences, however strange, are real enough to demand serious attention. The chapter begins by tracing the long history of parapsychological research, highlighting systematic studies that have attempted to test for psi under controlled conditions. Far from being mere anecdotes, many of these experiments, such as Ganzfeld telepathy studies, remote viewing trials, and random number generator experiments, have been replicated with results that consistently deviate from chance. The authors argue that while these deviations may be small, their statistical significance is robust, suggesting that something real is happening. One of the most thoroughly studied areas is telepathy, or mind-to-mind communication without using the known senses. In controlled experiments, individuals have been able to correctly identify images or words being sent to them from another room at rates above chance. Similarly, precognition experiments show that people sometimes appear to respond to future stimuli, images or events they haven't seen yet, as if they already know what's coming. The chapter also covers dramatic, spontaneous cases of CSI, such as people who suddenly know a loved one has died, only to have that intuition confirmed later, or individuals who dream about events that come true in uncanny detail. These episodes often occur in emotionally charged moments and are deeply meaningful to those who experience them. Kelly and his colleagues emphasize that the standard explanations, such as coincidence, faulty memory, or fraud, cannot account for the full body of evidence. While they agree that not all claims are valid, they insist that a consistent, high-quality core remains, pointing to genuine anomalous cognition. And if such phenomena are real, they imply that consciousness is not bound by the ordinary constraints of space and time. This conclusion deeply challenges the materialist paradigm, which holds that all mental activity must be the result of physical processes in the brain. If information can be transferred or received without a physical signal, then something beyond current physics must be involved. The authors suggest that psi phenomena may offer a window into a deeper level of reality, where mind is not a passive observer but an active, interconnected force. Rather than trying to fit these findings into an old framework, Kelly and his team argue for an expanded model of consciousness, one that sees the mind not as an isolated product of the brain, but as part of a larger informational field. Psi, in this view, is not supernatural, but supernormal, a natural human capacity that science has yet to fully understand. The chapter ends by acknowledging that accepting psi requires not just new theories, but a shift in worldview. It calls for humility, open-mindedness, and the courage to explore what mainstream science often refuses to touch. By doing so, the authors believe we can finally begin to uncover the full potential of the human mind. Chapter 8: Dissociation and the Powers of the Subconscious. In this chapter, Edward F. Kelly and his co-authors examine the extraordinary capabilities of the human mind when consciousness is split or altered, a condition often referred to as dissociation. Far from being merely a pathological or clinical issue, dissociation reveals the hidden depths and autonomy of the subconscious mind, challenging conventional psychology's narrow definitions of mental function. The chapter opens by exploring historical and modern cases of multiple personality disorder, now more commonly known as dissociative identity disorder, DID. In such individuals, different identities, each with their own memories, preferences, accents, and even physiological responses, can emerge within the same person. These are not just mental constructs. Some identities have allergies or medical conditions that others do not. Some speak foreign languages the host has never learned. Such phenomena point to the startling power of the subconscious to generate entire selves, each operating with a degree of independence from the conscious mind. Kelly and his co-authors dive deeper by analyzing cases from the golden era of hypnotism and trance studies, where subjects under hypnosis demonstrated abilities that defy conventional explanation. Some could describe events they had no way of knowing. Others exhibited skills or memories they claimed to have forgotten. In certain trance states, individuals channeled personalities with different voices, worldviews, and knowledge bases. These were not simply acts of imagination or role-playing. They revealed hidden levels of cognition that operate beneath the surface of awareness. One particularly intriguing area explored in this chapter is automatic writing, where people produce written material without conscious intent. This writing can reflect knowledge or perspectives seemingly foreign to the person's normal personality. Similarly, mediumship and channeling phenomena are considered as forms of deep dissociation, where the subconscious takes center stage, potentially giving voice to information outside the individual's known experience. The authors also discuss savant syndrome in dissociative contexts, where individuals suddenly gain extraordinary skills, such as advanced math, music, or artistic ability, sometimes following trauma, head injury, or trance states. These events suggest that such capabilities may lie dormant within the subconscious and become accessible when the usual boundaries of self are disrupted. Through these examples, the chapter drives home a key idea. The subconscious is not simply a storehouse of forgotten memories or primitive drives, as early psychology claimed. It is highly intelligent, creative, and sometimes wiser than the conscious ego. It holds the ability to manage complex tasks, process emotions, solve problems, and even create alternate identities when needed. This understanding challenges the materialist view of the mind as a linear, centralized processor. Instead, the mind appears to be layered, dynamic, and plural, with multiple centers of awareness that can act semi-independently of one another. The brain may be the medium through which these minds express themselves, but the origins and structure of consciousness are far more complex than mainstream psychology admits. In conclusion, this chapter suggests that dissociation isn't merely a breakdown of unity. It's a window into the true multidimensional nature of the human mind. The subconscious is not passive, but active and powerful. And until science embraces this fuller picture, our understanding of consciousness will remain incomplete. Chapter 9: Toward a Psychology for the 21st Century. As we close the final chapter of Irreducible Mind by Edward F. Kelly and his team of researchers, we are left with a revolutionary message, one that challenges the very core of modern science's understanding of consciousness. This book is not merely a critique of materialist psychology. It is a bold and rigorous invitation to reimagine the mind as something far more expansive, enduring, and mysterious than the brain alone can account for. Through detailed exploration of near-death experiences, psychic phenomena, dissociative states, placebo effects, and the hidden powers of the subconscious, the authors build a compelling case that human consciousness transcends the physical boundaries of the body. They do not ask us to abandon science, but to expand it, to include all aspects of human experience, even those that appear anomalous or mystical. Their goal is to push the field of psychology forward into a 21st century model that respects both objective observation and inner experience. What makes Irreducible Mind so powerful is its insistence on data before dogma, its willingness to examine extraordinary evidence without fear, and its respect for thinkers like William James and Frederick Myers, who believed that science must be as broad as the phenomena it seeks to explain. In this spirit, the book serves as both a summary of everything that modern psychology has overlooked and a blueprint for the future. Whether you are a scientist, a philosopher, a spiritual seeker, or simply a curious mind, this book challenges you to question deeply, think widely, and feel fully. It reminds us that consciousness is not a puzzle to be solved, but a reality to be honored, and perhaps even awakened. Thank you for joining us on this remarkable journey through Irreducible Mind. At Audiobook World, we're committed to bringing you the most thought-provoking, eye-opening, and life-changing books from the worlds of psychology, philosophy, science, and spirituality, translated into rich and accessible audio summaries for the curious and conscious listener. If you enjoyed this summary and want to explore more works that challenge conventional thinking and unlock new dimensions of the human experience, make sure to follow our channel. Every week we dive into books that help you better understand your mind, your potential, and the hidden truths of the universe. Until next time, keep listening, keep learning, and keep expanding your world, one audiobook at a time. This is Audiobook World, where deep ideas find a powerful voice. Irreducible Mind by Edward F. Kelly and his collaborators is not just a book, it's a turning point in the scientific study of consciousness. Across 9 deeply researched chapters, the authors challenge the idea that the mind is nothing more than brain activity. They present overwhelming evidence from near-death experiences, CSI phenomena, hypnotic states, dissociation, and spontaneous healing to argue that consciousness is far richer, deeper, and more mysterious than materialist science admits. This is not speculation. It's a carefully documented investigation that draws from psychology, neuroscience, parapsychology, and philosophy to build a case that the human mind is irreducible. That is, it cannot be explained away as a product of chemical reactions or neural circuits alone. The mind shows capabilities, like accessing information beyond the 5 senses, healing the body, or separating into multiple identities, that defy current scientific frameworks. The authors argue that the future of psychology depends on breaking out of the narrow tunnel of materialism and embracing a broader, more courageous science, one that includes subjective experience, anomalous data, and the mysteries of consciousness. They call for a 21st century psychology that is open-minded, empirically rigorous, and spiritually aware. It's not about abandoning science, but deepening it, making room for the full range of what it means to be human. As the final chapter closes, one message echoes strongly. We are more than our biology. We are conscious agents, capable of transforming ourselves and touching realities far beyond what we can see. Irreducible Mind invites us to step into that mystery, not with fear, but with curiosity and wonder. This is Audiobook World. Thank you for listening to this powerful journey into Irreducible Mind. At Audiobook World, we believe that the right book at the right moment can shift your entire perspective. And this book is one of those rare works that does exactly that. Our goal is to bring you the most mind-expanding, life-changing, and soul-awakening books, summarized in a way that saves your time while keeping the heart of the message intact. From science and psychology to philosophy and spirituality, we explore ideas that go beyond the surface and invite you to think deeply. If you found this summary meaningful, make sure to follow Audiobook World for more powerful book journeys. We publish regular audio summaries that open your mind and elevate your understanding. Stay with us as we continue to explore the books that explore you.